Hello and welcome to Dinis Guarda YouTube podcast series powered by citiesabc.com and openbusinesscouncil.org. We are here once again to profile some of the leading thought leaders and personalities in the world that are pushing the boundaries and especially making us think about the present, the past and the future, and especially how we can actually use these ideas, this innovation to make our lives better, but as well to understand better our present and how we can actually better write the narratives of the future. So today I welcome to our series Samir Ceric. And Samir is a personality that I met recently, but I'm very fascinated because of his energy, first of all, and as well the way he puts himself to do things, which for me is actually a very, very powerful thing in the world of business and technology. Is currently the COO of Blocksport.io, one of the world leading sports tech solution providers, and we're going to be talking about that. But he has a huge background that's much bigger than just his role, that touches as an investor, entrepreneur, and senior executive in professional different roles. And as a philanthropist, thought leader, and thinker, he's been speaking and as well involved in organizations like London Business School, TEDx. Is an alumni member of the George Soros Foundation, the Open Society, and the guest lecturer and mental health campaigner as well. And what is interesting is that Samir has both the culture of Europe and as well the culture of China, Asia, and a lot of different parts. And he has this capacity to create relationships that are fantastic. So one of the things as well in terms of the work of Serique and the knowledge that he's doing is the work he's been doing in terms of looking at different fields. We're going to be focusing a lot on sports, but it's been as well looking at structured finance, investment, creative industries, where film, music, and fashion arts as well, one of their passions. And of course, sports, where they want to look at ways how to digitize sports and create new communities to the big communities of sports people around the world, both the sports professionals and the sports fans. So his education is quite amazing as well, from former Yugoslavia to the world, and a lot of different things. We're going to be talking about his background and how his polyfaceted personality can actually inspire people listening to us and taking us to new journeys and new understandings. Welcome to our series, Samir.
Thank you so much, Dinis. What an introduction. I'm honored to be here on your program.
No, the honor is all mine. So, Samir, I want to start by, you have quite a unique journey, okay? Because of course you grew up in the Balkans and as well in a lot of different nuances, but as well you are a citizen of the world, now based in London, but as well with understanding of the Chinese culture, the Asian culture, and I think one of the most international, in the good way, personality that I met. So can you tell us a bit about how did you become who you are and your inception from probably what make you be the leader that you are in business and technology, but as well, this kind of things, probably some of the highlights of your career, especially before your career, highlights of your education that made who you are.
Thank you, Dinis. So, as you mentioned, I have been living in London since my teenage years for more than 30 years. Yes, I was born at the time what was Yugoslavia, and then later on, after the breakup, became Bosnia and all the other former Yugoslavian countries. It was interesting for me because, you know, having been born in what I call a privileged sort of environment, and in the family of lawyers, judges, diplomats, academics, entrepreneurs, landowners, investors, you know, I kind of within the family reach had access to all those amazing people who had their own experience. And one of the biggest influences of my sort of early lives was my grandfather, who had a triple degree at the military academy, law in economics. He spoke 7 languages and he traveled the world. And as a young kid, he used to take me to some of the legal cases and lawsuits across the country. I didn't really understand fully why he was doing it, but as a privileged family and quite a significant family of that whole region, he made a point in the later stage of his life to really dedicated to sort of represented and underprivileged. So instead of as a lawyer, practicing lawyer at the time, who had his own law firm, instead of charging an arm and a leg like lots of other people did, he very much funded lots of these legal cases. And I remember age 7, after the end of one of them, instead of actually charging his client, he ended up giving him money because the client explained to him that he didn't have money to buy his kids boots in order to educate him, because if you didn't have the boots, you couldn't walk for miles to actually go to the local school. So for me, it's sort of growing around the importance of charity and philanthropy, on top of obviously the sort of the success in your career, was something that was instilled in me as a young kid, which I probably at the time didn't really understand fully. But later on, with my own journey, basically leaving the friends, the family, as a teenager, coming to the country that I actually luckily knew, because I've got English uncle, I've got English cousins. So as a young kid, I used to come to London relatively sort of frequently. So London and England and the United Kingdom weren't totally new to me, but that was something that I at the time thought I would probably spend a few months up to a couple of years, but very much end up being the sort of the rest of my life up until now. I was always very good at maths and sport. I played handball at the national level as a junior, and lots of my sort of comrades went and played at the World Cup and the Olympic Games. So I was actually brought up as an elite athlete, and for me, sport was always important. It was part of my, I think, DNA in my blood. But I pursued mathematics at the master's degree. I did it at Bologna, the oldest university in the world, because as a young kid, I was always fascinated by opera. But sadly, even though my parents used to take me to operas, I couldn't really understand it because they were all in Italian. So it was an important thing for me to pursue two things in the higher education. One is the love for mathematics, which really wasn't just about numbers. Actually, at the degree level and master's level, we didn't see any numbers. My favorite subjects of mathematics were decision theory and the stats and probability, and the decisions we make every day of the week. Some very sort of simple decisions, what to eat, some very important decisions, who to go in business with, and what investments to make. And obviously, the human behavior and the sort of the whole psychology is based on stats and probability. And these are the subjects that kind of help me understand the world, the life, and the society we live in at a sort of rather different level to just a number crunching exercise. And obviously the ability to be able to finish my bachelor's in Italy in Italian and complete my master's in the UK was an important part of my own journey, which then led me to being in the MA world and the investment world as part of my career.
So can you tell us, how did you get into that investment world? Because of course you have for people listening to us, and I think actually I like that part of the career because it's quite an impressive, and you still have a very big relationship there. A bit of understanding on that I would like to hear.
So I had two options basically. I had an option to go and pursue what all of my friends did, which is investment banking, and end up working for the Lehmans at the time. Obviously, we know the Lehmans collapsed in 2008, but Goldman Sachs, your Deutsche Bank, your Dresden at the time, which was a very strong investment bank, et cetera, or to pursue my own journey, where I actually went in largely down to the mentors I had at the time. And I will talk later on about the importance of mentors, because I think without strong mentors, it's very, very hard to succeed at the level that one could actually succeed. So I pursued the road of my own undertaking of the investment world and entrepreneurship, ended up by sort of fluke in certain instances as the senior executive of the national airline at the young age of 27. Ended up working with telecom companies and meeting Richard Branson, with whom I almost ended up doing a deal with his Virgin Mobiles. And one of the companies I was a senior executive, the CEO of. And then ultimately, my pathway of the looking at the investment opportunities from tech to real estate to the structured finance to acquisition of banks led me to going back and forth to Asia over the past 17 to 18 years, which opened a totally different opportunities for me, because at the time, the Asian, or particular Chinese investors, were looking for the way to diversify their investment risks and really sort of come into the United Kingdom and into the Western Europe opportunity, investment opportunity landscape. And having worked with a number of single family offices there, and the second generation of the Chinese and Asian investors who were largely educated at the boarding schools in UK and also at the top universities here, has kind of informed my understanding of the power of the Asian continent, which goes back to the fact that Yugoslavia and Tito at the time had a very good relationship with the entire world, from the USSR to China to India to the United States and the Western Europe. And we kind of basically lived in the crossroads of East and West. And if you go to the Balkans, you will see the huge influence of the Ottoman Empire, of Austro-Hungarian Empire, of the various kingdom of Yugoslavia and other Balkans nations. So it's a truly international, cosmopolitan, and sort of East meets West cultural melting pot, which has massively helped me in being able to facilitate and translate the cultural differences between East and West when it comes down to the investment world. Because I've been in too many sort of instances where the sort of counterparties between East and West were speaking in the culturally wrong way, which led to no deals and to no further investment opportunities, purely because they didn't fully understand the cultural differences. So I'm a great believer that we celebrate the sort of similarities, but we learn about the differences in the way they help us do business, help us open sort of opportunities for each other, help us combine interests and generate success stories as a result of that.
That is actually fantastic, and I think it shows as well it's more necessary than ever in this world I think we are probably at this 2022, for people listening to us in the future, that we are actually getting to a similar time with a bit of a kind of new Cold War, let's put it in ways. The point right now is probably we do this with quantum computing and AI, which makes it more from nuclear stuff to a lot of different things. So I want to touch your career background. So you touch your education, your investment part. I didn't mention, but you were as well one of the minds behind the Olfen Ledger. There was a big firm that was very powerful in terms of the fashion industry. So you have quite a huge experience that touched like big brands, big personalities. So how do you connect these different areas, from professional athletes and now on this area to investment banking, fashion, and arts?
Well, I think the common denominator of all of it is human capital. Whether we're looking at the fashion and art industry on the sort of talent spotting and talent management, which translates well in the sports industry. I remember when I became the chairman of the biggest football club in Bosnia, one of the interviews with the CNN was, what's fashion and art industry on the investment space got to do with the sports industry? And I explained to the presenter there, of course, in the sort of talent spotting, talent management, and the talent development, you actually find that across the board from the big corporates, because we all talk about the importance of the career ladder and how you actually go up the ladder, you end up being, from whatever position you started off, or potentially CEO, COO, or sort of C-level executive. And the key thing that brings all of this together is just basically the ability to spot the opportunities, create opportunities. Market make is something that lots of people talk about, but they don't really understand the full mechanics of it. And you mentioned, what's today still one of the most pioneering, innovative businesses in the fashion and luxury sector, which is Wolf & Badger, which was actually recently rewarded a B Corp status in the UK as the company that can basically demonstrate that you can bring profit and purpose together. One of the key things that was always a driving force behind me as an entrepreneur and as an investor is that if you are an entrepreneur and investor, you actually have social responsibility to make the right decisions and not only return money to the investors and the investment groups and the VCs that have invested and recognized the opportunity, but you also have the responsibility towards the society. You have to problem solve. You have to bring something new, a value add to the table. You have to empower and educate your workforce. You have to make some tough decisions when you have to let people go, because there are times when the company outgrows the staff, or the staff outgrows the company. And it's important that business cannot be taken personal. I've been mentoring young entrepreneurs, young investors for a long time, and I still occasionally run so-called business surgeries where basically these young entrepreneurs come with their challenges and their problems, and then we try to sort of help them get from A to B to C to D. And you know, for me, being able at the time, I mean, I remember Wolf & Badger became an overnight success. We won the Walpole Brand of Tomorrow, which is the biggest, most prestigious award in the United Kingdom's luxury sector. I remember even a phone call from a head of global marketing, W Hotels, which at the time was expanding to Asia and Europe. And they wanted our concept in every single W hotel open in Europe and Asia, because they believed that we were onto something of not just discovering these amazing designers from around the world, but also giving them the education in the business sector, opening doors for them, mentoring them, guiding them, and guarding them in the process. Because one thing education is still struggling with, but I'm happy to see that there are more and more industry people getting into education, is to actually be able to translate the real life experience via the textbooks and prepare the students for the real life once they've graduated, once they're out in the competitive working environment. So every decision I made in relation to who I go in business with, which vision I'm joining if it's not my own vision, because I'd like to think that when joining forces and recognizing another entrepreneur's vision and wanting to add value and help them achieve it is basically the way one should run their life and recognize the opportunities. We on our own are, you know, pretty meaningless in terms of what we can achieve. The achievements around us, including me, are always down to the teams of people that you work with, you inspire, you motivate, you encourage, you empower to achieve and get the best out of them. And if you can be the leader that recognizes the potential, that is there when the people are struggling, and is able to articulate the challenges to the investment groups and the boards at the times when they are also looking to make tough decisions, I think you're doing the right thing, and you are on the road to success.
Yeah, I love that part that you highlight the people first, but you mentioned as well the struggles that is to build what you build, because like you mentioned, Wolf & Badger was at a certain point one of the biggest fashion platforms in the world in terms of cutting edge innovation and so forth. And I know that you left the project as well. So you had as well to go through a lot of things. So I would like to touch, so from your career, and your career is really impressive. I only touched this, touched the surface. Some of the highlights that you have, and as well, a great success and a great failure that actually made you rethink things. Because I think when we look at people, so big achievers like you are, people tend to see, of course, one or two things, but they forgot the struggle, like you said, the efforts that are behind this, because being successful is incredibly difficult, but at the same time, it creates a lot of difficulty. Most of people give up, I would say almost everyone. And if I look at my team, it's very difficult to keep the performance and the focus, because people tend to get out of the focus and the performance, and they get excuses not to get things done, and they get very confused. So I would like to hear, how do you cope with these big achievements and eventually one of the things that you had actually to learn that you're not expecting?
Well, I was going to add that, of course, no achievements and no success comes without lessons learned. I'm a great believer. There are no failures in life, only lessons learned. And this is what I teach my children as well, that only those who try and only those who learn could eventually succeed. And I've made many mistakes. I made mistakes in who I go to business with. I made mistakes in sometimes trying for too long and not making decisions on when to exit the business or actually shut the business down, because not everything you think of, no matter how much effort and energy you put in, is going to work for various reasons. It may not be nothing to do with you, your capabilities. It could be to do with the market conditions. We're seeing now with what's happening in the crypto market, and we'll talk about that a bit later on. Lots of people panic. I felt, recently in the last couple of years, it's been a huge challenge for the entire world. I think people being locked down for prolonged period of time was a particularly sort of negative impacted their mental well-being. And I think having learned at a young age that the expectations of something to end soon by actually not ending and prolonging for months and then years has taught me the power of patience, the power of tenacity, the power of the continuous belief, and half full rather than half empty glass. Because if you have a choice to think positively and negatively, my view is that you might as well think positive. If you have a choice of thinking big or small, and you're consuming the same amount of energy, you might as well think big. Even if you don't achieve all the things you set out to achieve, you will probably achieve so much more if you are ambitious, if you are committed, if you showcase the sort of most difficult skill actually to acquire. It's not just a characteristic, it's patience. If you manage to draw from your so-called difficulties and challenges and what most people will call failures, which I repeat call lessons learned, you basically sharpen yourself, you improve your character, and you improve dramatically a chance of success. So I have seen over the past 2 or 3 years lots of people who have not coped well and who are just now coming out of that very dark place, and who have had to cut down, shut up their entire operations, and they are struggling to recover. I've also seen this hybrid model of what you're talking about. How do we motivate the workforce now? I'm actually, just like in the retail sector, I'm a great believer of online and offline. I'm a great believer that the engagement and the experience you can offer in the basically offline capacity, whether it's in the retail sector of the high street shop, massively improves your chances of online success when it comes down to sales and the KPIs and the bottom line. I'm also a great believer that in now this real attempt of the corporate world to cut down on expenses and remove as much of the office space as possible, many are making a mistake, because you cannot possibly motivate and inspire your teams just online. I think that physical touch, the energy flow, is incredibly important for the success of any organization today. I think the online and the COVID times have taught us that we don't need to, at the same time, rush to every meeting face to face, travel the world for the sake of a single meeting to find out that that was not a fitting partner, a fitting customer, and a worthy meeting, having spent thousands of pounds and dozens of hours on the flight and in the sort of hotel accommodation. I think, again, with the experience of 80s and 90s, with the experience of a number of recessions that I've been through over the past 25 years of being in business, I hope I'm a smarter, wiser, and more experienced in being able to add value in everything I do, whether it's in the educational sector. And this is where I think the emergence of edtechs in the education in particular, and the combination of the bricks and mortar and the online way of learning, and coupled with the industry intake, which is something I often talk about, the Power MBA program that has managed to attract lots of industry heavyweights that are giving their basically experience to the aspiring students that want to set up their businesses, and they're really looking at the mechanics of the, you know, what makes business successful, is the way forward.
Amazing, and I love that you're touching this component, and I think you just mentioned one thing critically, that effectively we need face-to-face interactions. We need to keep the traditional with the digital and different things. So let's go to your really fantastic achievements. So before we get into Blocksport, which I know that is one of your major projects right now, and it's actually a fantastic project for people not listening to us, we're going to touch there. But let's look at before Blocksport, let's say 2 or 3 benchmarks that we would highlight. We talk about Wolf and Badger, but a lot of other things that you're really proud of achieving, because you have art, investment, retail, a lot of things that are really, for a lot of people, would be a lifetime, but in your case, it's only the beginning.
So, I mean, I think what kind of shaped my early career was basically getting involved in the industry, which I didn't know much about, which is telecommunications, and taking up a sort of senior executive role as the CEO of the global operation in London, which is, you know, I think what I mentioned earlier, which led me to meeting of Richard Branson and almost doing a business with them. I remember when I traveled to Hungary to present to the Hungarian National Telecom, I had a sort of very much a turbulent trip, because I was new to the telco business, but at the same time, I understood the power of technology even 20 years ago, and the ability to actually explain to the people in the industry what it is that that basically differentiated us from the rest of the industry, from the company, from the Balkans at the time, competing with some of the biggest ones in the world. So, you know, being a CEO of, you know, billing solution provider that was providing solution of billing around the world, including the Deutsche Telekom, was very much something that sort of gave me that confidence and the grounding and the knowledge to be where I am today. And even today, and we will talk, as you mentioned, about the power of technology in the sports industry, I still take lots and lots of inspiration from that. And on top of that, it was also the about a couple of years ago, joining of the 6G Digital, which is a digital platform that has recently signed a deal with Vietnamese government in terms of provision of the fintech solution. And our ambition is to build Vietnam's first digital currency. And meeting Mr. Zaman, who has been involved with the Vietnamese government over the past 30 years in delivering their biggest telco operator worth 8 billion market cap, has been a hugely privileged and honoring thing to be able to join the board of the 6G Digital and help in shaping the strategy towards Southeast Asia, but also looking at other JV opportunities around the world, including Africa and the Balkans. So again, the sort of role, not just, you know, being a board director, because I've had enough, I think, chairmanship and board director roles over the past 25 years. For me, it was the opportunity that I was given, and the trust that the ownership structure and the investors had in me to take the communication and the direction of the company onto the next level.
Well, fantastic, and really congratulations, because that's a big achievement, to say less. So moving to Blocksport. So Blocksports is quite cutting edge as well, what you're doing, and I think I would say that you will be creating a huge amount of new solutions. So for people now not knowing, Blocksports is a Swiss-based company, provider for the sports industry. They provide the sports and sports clubs, federations, and leagues with their branded and exclusive mobile apps, NFT solutions, and fan tokens. I'll stop here. I think you'll tell us more about it. So tell us why it's created, how you are taking it forward, and a bit about it.
So, Dinis, you've actually summed it up really well. So the good thing about Blocksport, which I often say it's a kind of a boring Swissco. Yes, it's set up in Zug, which is known as the Crypto Valley, which the sort of the highest level of regulation in the world when it comes down to that. So it has got that trusted background in terms of the where it's set up. He actually started a few years ago as the fan engagement app mobile solution for esports teams. And in the recent years, and especially since I joined, it's actually transcended into traditional sports to provide a very actually unique solution. Because if you look at the sports tech space at the moment, it's full of companies that are offering tokens, they're offering NFTs, they're offering the gamified component offering, they're offering the fan engagement apps, etc. But Blocksport is the only company in the world that actually offers their full ecosystem. And that's our big, unique selling point, is that one, we understand what clubs, leagues, federations, and athletes really need. And I think what most sports tech companies overlook today is that, of course, everyone needs to create new revenues. And obviously that's something that our technology enables all of our partners and customers to do. But at the same time, the fan engagement and the ability to offer fans even better opportunity to engage with their beloved clubs is something that's been massively overlooked over the past few years, and it's still today. So Blocksport has thought of the full ecosystem, has thought of A to Z guide to all these sporting entities that will be able to help them facilitate opportunities in terms of the revenue creation, improvement of their sort of sponsorship activation missions, improvement of the fan engagement, and has come up with, in my view, very smart thing, which is a non-speculative fan token. And actually, when people ask me today, but how do you cope with a, crypto market being in a very much a bear market status, I say, in actual fact, it's massively helped us. For one main reason is because I've been a huge promoter of non-speculative fan tokens of clubs for a long time now. As a former chairman of the club, I remember, when I was inaugurated as the chairman, one of the first things I said to the assembly and the fans is that we, as the senior management of the football club, are here for a relatively short period of time. Most top clubs in the world have been around for 100, 150 years and will be around for another 100, 150 years. So what we must do is we must make sure that we protect and look after the club's biggest asset, which is its fan base. So the fact that I've seen far too many clubs rushing to crypto exchanges, rushing to list their tokens, which often attract 95 to 99% of speculative crypto traders who technically don't give a thing about the club, because in their wallets they have dozens of these tokens and dozens of these coins. I sort of reversed perhaps initial thought process of Blocksport to go down that road and introduce this non-speculative crypto sort of fan token products, which enable clubs to actually use these tokens to offer fans benefits, better utilities, and really educate them in the process. Because one thing the sports industry needs, and we at Blocksport are trying very, very hard to not only be the providers of the blockchain technology solution, but also educators of the industry, of both the club operators, because the senior management is still struggling with understanding what's really going on in the digital space, how to digitalize and tokenize their assets, how to do it in the responsible way so it doesn't actually impact negatively on their brand value, and at the same time explain to their fans that apart from coming to stadiums, apart from buying jerseys, apart from subscribing to certain things and buying content, that the digital assets are also there to increase the loyalty of the fans, to give them money can't buy experience, to potentially get them onto the road to one day meet their heroes, to engage with their heroes. And this is something we're going to talk later on about, the power of metaverse and the sort of digital counterparty on the other side. So for all these reasons, Blocksport is now starting to be deemed as seen as a very, very serious contender in the sports tech industry. Not to say that we're market leader, because we're not. There are much bigger companies out there that are funded by major VCs in hundreds of millions and are signing a mega deals. But I feel that this is a marathon, not a sprint. And I'd like to think that 5 years down the line, when we look back perhaps at this interview, when we look back at this conversation, when we look back at some other conversations I've done with the media platforms out there, that we will see that all of this buzz that's been happening in the sports tech industry, the majority of that buzz is long gone, and the players like Blocksport are around because they always had the hierarchy of importance in the right way, which is where I often talk about the pyramid. And the pyramid in the sports industry ought to have the fans at the top, the sports management and operators in the middle, and the players like us, the blockchain technology providers at the bottom, because we are here to service the industry. We're not here to steal the customer data. Actually, in actual fact, all the data and content is owned by our partners. We are purely the facilitator and enabler of their further engagement and their new revenue creations in order to make their business model succeed.
So you touch the biggest, most powerful topics that are not just sports, but special in sports, that are critical. I know that you have started already creating a huge amount of partnerships and business that is real. Like you said, there's a lot of hype, a lot of PR, but the reality is that most of people don't even have a very basic digital strategy, much less blockchain strategy or metaverse. So can you tell us this kind of, what is public, of course, the kind of the highlights that you did so far, and for instance, one case study, for instance, with one club or with one sports organization, because that's fantastic things in what you said, but I would like to go from the top level to understand how this works in practice.
Sure. So, since my arrival as a CEO of Blocksport in December of last year, I have seen the sort of existing, or at the time sort of contract stage relationships really evolve with Empoli in Serie A to Partizan Basketball Club in the EuroLeague now, and all the way to basically the Salford Red Devils, the rugby club in the United Kingdom, which is launching their fund tokens in September of next month. So we have seen how certain clubs and some of our partners have taken the whole sort of opportunity very seriously in the attempt to fully digitalize their sort of club membership and really go down the pathway of embracing the blockchain solution and technology that comes with it. So we last month launched actually 2 fund token offerings, non-speculative utility-based, one with Empoli in Serie A and one with Partizan, which is now playing the EuroLeague as of this season. And we have seen that the kind of the positive and negatives of the way in which you approach it is that the key to success of these kind of services that the clubs are now extending to their fan base is purely down to the education of the fan base. Because as you said, Dinis, it's still a bit of the unknown territory for both their sporting entities as also their fans. There are far too many speculative digital assets out there, the ones that have worked and the ones that haven't worked. And I think that the industry is still divided in whether this is a good or bad thing. But one thing that I always try to get across is that NFTs and fan tokens are just a part of the blockchain ecosystem. And the blockchain ecosystem is about smart contracts. And smart contracts are about democratization of the industry and the fairness and transparency. Because for far too long, industries have lacked transparency. They have lacked the sort of ability to attract bigger investment size tickets, because lots of investors don't want to go into the areas that are not transparent enough. And I think now we are seeing with recent signing of the Bulgarian Football Federation, we are working on their national team fan engagement app. Then we're going to be launching their fan tokens and NFTs. We're going to be looking at their legends. We're going to be looking at the sort of connection of their international audience and their diaspora with the signing of Kaizer Chiefs Football Club, which is the biggest franchise in South Africa. We're currently preparing the launch of their fan engagement app, and then we are discussing the launch of their utility fan tokens. And the entire ecosystem of Blocksport, with recent openings of the representative offices in Saudi Arabia, in Australia, in the Middle East, in South America, and across Europe, is starting to see our solution being sort of respected in the way like no other. And I'll tell you why. Most of other competitors of ours have had to pay a huge sponsorship amounts of money to engage and ultimately sign the deals with the major tier 1 clubs. I was a great believer that we at Blocksport have got the perfect long-term technology solution for clubs, leagues, federations, and athletes, that we don't need to pay to play and basically spend lots of money on the sponsorship in order to get the signature on the dotted line. Because unless the clubs buy into what we are doing, or the clubs buy into any digital solution of this nature, it's not actually going to work. We've seen the debacle of Liverpool and Christie's deal. We are now seeing the Sotheby's in Barcelona have launched another NFT on their platform in order to sort of celebrate one of the most special moments. We're starting to see major brands, both in the art auction world, with Sotheby's and Christie's obviously being the leading parties in it, and the biggest brands in the world of football in particular, but I'm sure the NBA will soon follow, joining forces. However, what's really lacking there is the buy-in from the senior management in understanding what's on offer and buy-in from the fans. If the fans don't buy in that this is a good thing for the club, long term, they will not play ball. If the fans don't play ball, you can release thousands of NFTs, you can launch and release millions of tokens, but it will not be successful. So we are working very hard on educational part of the equation, creation of the video content that really delivers those educational points, and working on the ground with the clubs, understanding the cultural differences, because you cannot offer tokens and NFTs in the same way in Serbia, in Italy, in South Africa, in Kenya, in Australia. So you have to, we talked early on about the cultural differences and the importance of understanding of those cultures where you work or the markets you penetrate. And that's something that Blocksport, as a very international organization, is trying to do and trying to achieve.
You touched actually the most important thing, and I think, of course, there's another element that I would like to add, and probably as a follow-up is definitely the NFTs is a new technology. Very few people know how to use it. There's probably around 2 million people that know how to use it, or actually that use it, let's put it that way. And even these 2 million people, most of them have like probably $100 in NFTs, because it's still a power game of very few people. So I think we have as well to make a parallel between what is happening in the industry and the .com, because we are in the same part. And you mentioned in the beginning the challenge with the crypto and all this stuff. The .com, and you are a trader and investor, yeah, much bigger. Even look at, I think for people listening to us, if you look at the Amazon stock, which right now is one of the biggest companies in the world, people were saying it's a scam, will be going to zero, and actually crash as much as Bitcoin. So it's interesting to make these parallels and different things. But I love what you're doing in terms of education and different areas. So I don't want to go too much on this, and we are wrapping up at least for the first hour. And I think this will be a first series, because I want to much more to follow up with this. And I think we're going to be doing a series about sports and education. So you touched education, and you touched the cultural nuances that exist when it comes to sports and when it comes to technology. And I think it's the right approach, because effectively you can have fantastic vision, but if you don't have the relationships, it doesn't work. And that's partly the failure of crypto and the failure of blockchain, because not failure, but at least the challenge that we are facing in the industry. And that's well because there's right now 8 billion people on planet Earth. Around 5 billion have access to the internet in one way or the other, or 6. But in the end of the day, there's only 350 million people that have some kind of crypto or digital assets. So there's a lot of work. Of course, the jump will be from 300, like last year, for instance, 2021, it went from 100 million to 300 million. So it's a triple. So if you go right now from 300 million to triple again, it goes probably to over 1 billion. And of course, now we are in this crypto winter situation. But I'm more interested in the concrete cases. So you mentioned a couple of clubs, some of them quite big. Some of them might not be the first premium league, but this is becoming mainstream. So how do you look at this part of right now educating and as well creating case studies that are strong, like what you guys are doing, and how this can really help both the fans, the sports clubs, and the professionals? Because in the end of the day, that's as well the vision of Web 3.0, that everyone wins. Because one of the challenges with Web 2.0 is that the money stays just in the corporations. The rest of the people are just kind of used by the corporations. And nothing wrong about corporations, because they did their best, but I'm just saying that it needs to be a more fair game.
No, absolutely. And I think the way I look at every opportunity that is plausible for us and interesting to us as a company is that I often say to the people on the other side that we as the company are not looking for customers. Actually, we're looking for partners. And the reason for that is that unless we establish this, as you mentioned, win-win structure and the bridge, and we all buy into the sort of tasks at hand, which include a great deal of education of the workforce at the club level and then the fan base as well, it's not going to work. So for me, it's become more and more important. And this is why it's perhaps a little bit easier what we're doing at the moment, working with tier 2 clubs. So although there might be tier 1 in the respective sports arenas, like in the case of basketball and Partizan, they're not deemed as tier 1. So they're not your Man United, Chelsea's, Arsenal's, Bayern Munich's, Barcelona's of the world. But that's okay, because I think these clubs have got totally different hierarchy structure, different interest zones. Not to say that we not engage with them, because I am. I have lots of connections at the tier 1 sport industry across the board, and I have ongoing conversations with all of them. But for me and for us, the key thing to make this successful is the buy-in from the side of our partners, because and I've seen it where it worked and where it didn't work, where we didn't have the buy-in, where we basically ended up doing everything for the club. It didn't work because they then didn't translate and communicate to the fans in the way, because they either haven't fully understood it, or they're not basically proud enough of what they have in their hands because they don't understand it. Because you know that sometimes a lack of understanding leads to withdrawal from the opportunity that might be real. Where we have managed to educate the management, where we have managed to add another pair of hands, maybe in between Blocksport and the club, who also understood and was close to what the fans were saying, the comments the fans were making, the criticism the fans were making in terms of exactly what you talked about, Amazon being deemed as a scam and now being, the richest company in the world. It's important to open yourself up to criticism, but only take the constructive criticism into equation, because you will always have cynics and skeptics in whatever you do. And if I listen to cynics and skeptics, amongst my family, friends, immediate networks, I'd never be where I am today, because taking calculated risks in business and in life is something I believe is necessary to do if you want to achieve things. Caring about what everyone says is not something that is the right thing to do, because you will never be able to please everyone in whatever you do. And especially if you are innovating, if you are pioneering in something, you will attract so much a sort of a blockage, so many challenges, because there are many people out there, including the industry leaders of the time, who don't want you to succeed, because if you succeed, you might take a portion of the market they're already controlling. But I was brought up as a big sort of supporter of the blue ocean strategy, which is the business strategy of cooperation and collaboration, rather than the red ocean, which is about pure competition and taking your competition out. So even today, when I talk to lots of clubs who say to me, but we have NFT provider, I say, that's okay. We will incorporate even our deemed competition into our own ecosystem, because I believe in what we do. I believe that we have understood the industry better than anybody else, and I have no concerns or fear when it comes down to the competition. I actually want to see which competitors of ours could actually be quite fitting with our business model, how we jointly could basically attract a bigger market share, and how we jointly could also educate both the club operators as well as the fans for the benefit of the fans and the clubs, not the benefit of the sports tech companies. We will only benefit and win if we truly want to do that, if our partners are benefiting across the board. We will not win even short term if all we care about is the return of investment towards the investment groups, investors, or ourselves as the co-founders or driving forces of those companies.
Well, that's inspiring, and I think everyone listening to us should be looking at that. That is, I think, the most important thing. So I know that you passed 1 hour benchmark, but I want one last question, and you touched this. But so you are in the verge of building something really amazing for sports, and I know that you're already succeeding, because in the end you start with the basis, with really the important thing. So my question is, how do you right now make the bridge with the 4AR, the metaverse, and all these different things to build the communities and to put all of this together? Because the two things right now, you cannot stop it. Like you said, there's education of NFTs, there's blockchain, there's all the players, and the only way you can get this is working together. But the technology is going very, very fast. So how you do these nuances and you work towards this?
So I think for me, the answer to that, Dinis, in terms of Blocksport position, but position of other sports tech companies, is really looking for the credible partners who are advancing their agenda in metaverse, who are advancing their agenda in VR, AR, AI, machine learning side of the equation. We are actually seeing a huge influx of the betting companies in particular, who are starting to see huge benefit in coming in a more meaningful way, rather than just jerseys, when it comes down to the engagement inside the blockchain solutions in particular. But metaverse perhaps a year ago was a buzzword, but it's no longer the case, because if we look at the history of blockchain in particular, I think the first NFTs emerged in 2014 in the art industry. The CryptoPunks in 2018 in the exhibition in Switzerland were only worth $50 a piece. Now they're selling between 5 and 10 million with Sotheby's and Christie's. And the actual art industry and the fashion world and the luxury sector in particular have been leading the way in that kind of adaptation of the blockchain solution, of the NFTs, of the metaverse sort of components, of the gamified components, which I didn't really mention much about, but NFT games currently being created are allowing fans to play and earn. And I think that's a new thing that many sporting entities and big brands are actually really pushing the agenda of the ability of the fans to actually earn whilst they play. And to come back to your question, how we tackling it, I think we're tackling it in a very cooperative way in trying to identify the right players in the marketplace who have a similar kind of DNA to ours, who have a similar vision, who have a similar aspiration of being the enabler of the good, the sort of facilitator of the good for the beneficiaries. In this case, if it's a sport industry, it's the clubs. If it's a fashion industry, it's the brands that will basically generation of consumers something that they are hungry and thirsty for. Because as a millennial, working predominantly now in the sort of new generations of consumers, you have to understand both where I come from or where we come from, and then where the new generation agenda really is when it comes down, whether it's a consumption of the sporting content, whether it's a consumption of the digital content, whether it's a consumption of the luxury content, whatever it is, that understanding is very important. And I'd like to think that, you know, we should all focus on what we're good at, and we should find credible, reputable partners to collaborate and cooperate with, and we bring each other into the equation. This is a main reason I basically orchestrated 2 or 3 very important strategic partnerships for Blocksport. One is with Result Sports and its founder Mario Leo, with whom I also connected on that vision of his. And Mario's been working with the likes of Borussia Dortmund on digital strategy since 2009. He works with the likes of Juventus, AC, Roma, the Man City, and the sort of federations around the world, and also COO, which is another amazing sports tech company that works with lots and lots of amazing clubs and federations across Europe and the world. Because by opening doors, joining forces and opening doors for each other, we are actually gaining the momentum on the importance of transparency and doing the right thing in the sports industry. And I think Metaverse is something I'm very, very excited about, and something that Blocksport is very keen to develop in partnerships and cooperations with other players.
Samir, I want to thank you. This has been a fantastic, first of all, learning curve, but I love how you touch the theory, the practice, and the people. And as well the geopolitics. So you actually, and I think this, for people listening to us, I would suggest that you guys go to blocksports.io, and we'll put all the links and a lot of the bio of Samir. There's a lot of things to learn. We didn't touch arts, we didn't touch as well the mentorship, which is actually very dear to me. But we're going to have a second take on this, and I think a lot more takes. Samir is someone I really deeply respect. So thank you for your time and generosity with us, and as well for your humbling opinion for someone that has so much achievements, how you keep life very down to earth, but as well achieving results.
Thank you so much, Dinis, for the opportunity, and you know, what a privilege. Thank you.
Thank you so much.